What's going on, everybody? Stocks by the numbers. Welcome back. Just wanted to do a quick overview here of MicroStrategy Incorporated. Someone asked about it. MSTR in the NASDAQ. This has become basically a straight Bitcoin play, in case you didn't know. And as you see here, this is about a 1 year chart, and we can see Bitcoin up almost 99% here in the last 12 months. And we can see MicroStrategy up almost 3x that, about 280.5%. And I think that, in my opinion, the stock keeps pumping, not only because, Bitcoin obviously goes up, so the stock goes up because they're holding so many. Over 200,000 Bitcoin this company is currently holding. Okay, think about that. But basically, so what they do is they keep issuing these notes, right? And these convertible notes, they take on debt and they push the years out, 2025, 2027, recently I think 2032, 2033 maybe. But see, the thing is, right, they issue the notes, they take on more debt, but they roll it right into an investment that the bulk of investors are bullish on. There are a lot of people out there, even like older investors, like in their 60s and their 70s, who have taken, a couple of 100,000 or maybe a million or so of their portfolio, and they positioned it somewhere in the cryptocurrency market, most likely Bitcoin, right? Which is why, in my opinion, it's basically keeping its value. And then, there's the halvings and whatnot, but it consistently keeps climbing over time. So Bitcoin right now pulled back. It's sitting here. It's down about 1.5%. And you can see that MicroStrategy has about 2.5, 3x move, right? So we're down about 3.33%. Obviously, up after hours here at 281, but we know that Bitcoin keeps moving. But if we switch over here, you can see that MicroStrategy owns 226,331 Bitcoins as of June 20th, 2024. Average price target 35,158, roughly 35. I saw one article saying 36,000. But, and see here it says total cost 75 billion, and then you come down here and you could look at the purchase history. And if we go all the way back, it was August of 2020 when the company began buying Bitcoin, and we can see that they spent about 8.33 billion. Right now, the only issue that really could arise from this type of strategy is that because they keep taking on more debt and kind of pushing that envelope further and further down the road, right, several years from now and then further and then further, uh, basically the only issue they can run into is if Bitcoin happens to start selling off and dropping bigly. So I know we usually, look at the fundamentals, we look at the technicals, we see how a stock looks, but this is now not really about the business itself, because the business, in my opinion, has kind of stagnated and the revenue has kind of plateaued. They really haven't done much. And I'm talking even like before 2020. But now that you invested, 7, 8 billion in Bitcoin, which I believe it's currently worth about 14 billion now. But because you invested so much in Bitcoin now, that's the play, right? And a lot of people are looking at it saying, well, I don't have, 60,000 to buy a Bitcoin, but this company is holding a lot of Bitcoin, so I can just, buy some shares of them for $1,300 each. And as Bitcoin goes up, I can make money off of this company. I see a lot of price targets like 18, 1900. I saw one price target recently lowered, but still holding, still maintaining like a $2,800 price target on MSTR. So basically what you have to ask yourself is, if you're familiar with cryptocurrency, right, and you want to take a position, and again, this is a Bitcoin holder, not a Bitcoin miner, like something like CleanSpark we looked at, CLSK. Again, shout out to that guy in the Discord. We started looking at that. It was down at like $4. The stock ran up to like 20 or something like that. So that was obviously a huge winner here on the channel. But what you have to ask yourself is, if you're familiar with the cryptocurrency space, if you're comfortable having an investment in crypto and specifically tied to Bitcoin, then hey, if you think over the next 2, 3, 5 years, Bitcoin's going to keep going higher, then by all means, you can purchase MicroStrategy, right? I mean, it basically just makes sense. It's that cut and dry. Because again, the business itself is just kind of hanging out. Market cap right now, we'll call it 23.5 billion. The company's technically losing money per share. But every time they issue notes, right, that was, right, was it there? Or maybe like the 8, no, I don't know. I'd have to go back to the article, but The big drop, I think it was right there on the 13th. I think they announced it like on the 12th or the 13th, and you can see we were kind of hanging out up here, and then they announced the new notes. Boom, right? We dropped down, and you can see we drop hard, try to bounce and rebound, and now we're kind of probably, in my opinion, going to like step down like that, do like a little ladder down. And I only say that also because I'll get to the fundamentals in MicroStrategy in a second, but I just want to show you Bitcoin comparing to Bitcoin. We can see that again, these trend lines, of course, we know anything can happen. And I drew out some trend lines and I was looking for a potential breakdown from a wedge, but volume really started to surge into Bitcoin to close out the year and to roll out the new year. And I think the halving happened sometime around here. I don't know. Honestly, you guys know I'm always honest with you. I don't follow Bitcoin and cryptocurrency too much. But if we look at the technicals, you can see this is going back from the lows before we had this big run up here. Going back from the lows there of October 12th, 23, kind of throughout those days there, 12, 13, 15, right? And if we come up and we connect to that bottom that it came down and dipped on January 23rd, 2024, that's this trend line coming up here. And you can see it's not necessarily going to be a big drop, but because MicroStrategy moves with Bitcoin, if you were planning on taking some short-term calls or puts, in my opinion, it might be puts, because it seems like Bitcoin is kind of cooling down. And again, even kind of like the sideways downward consolidation channel, I mean, it can potentially stay in this range for a while. And I know a lot of people thought recently we were going to have like a big run up and whatnot, but we've kind of just kind of stagnated here, almost in kind of like the sideways trumpet, as you see, but we also have a big drop, and then we're potentially in this upward consolidation channel here. So you might be able to make the argument, you know, that we're gonna potentially just kind of like flatten out or slightly climb here, and then we're going to break and maybe pull back to this support trend line. And if it happens immediately, right, we're looking, yeah, like if it happens the next couple of days, potential pullback maybe to about 58,500 in my opinion. So what's that? That's like 5%, right? So in my opinion, we could potentially see a 5% pullback in Bitcoin sometime soon. They might keep it here in the wedge for the next couple of days and maybe meet it up with this 20-day moving average here at about 64.4. So you might actually have about a 4 or 5% climb and then about like a 5-6% break in my opinion. But we know that it can change randomly, and of course Bitcoin trades 24/7. But in my opinion, this is basically an investment into Bitcoin when buying MicroStrategy. And let's go back to the numbers really quick, because I didn't want to talk your ear off here in this video. But as you see, the business itself has kind of stagnated, right? We know the debt has gone up. They're taking on more debt to buy more Bitcoin. The EPS has been, you know, hit and miss over the last couple of quarters. And we can see that even annually. Look at this. Even before 2020, we were at sub $500 million, 480 million. Then we broke above $500 million in 21, and then we went right back down to 499 million and then 496 million. So the business itself has kind of stagnated over about the last 5 years, right? So the company's bringing in about $500 million. And even if you look quarterly, you can see it's kind of plateauing and staying in this stagnant range as well. Roughly 122 million, 120, 129, 124, 115. And technically we're down year over year, right? From 122 million down to 115 million. We went net income negative. But again, I understand this is the revenue coming in. This is not the Bitcoin numbers. I understand. But 226,000 Bitcoin at roughly 62,000 each, again, is over $14 billion of current value in Bitcoin. And the market cap right now, 23.5 billion. So that's why if they're trading at, even if you want to call it a 2x multiple, compared to the move of Bitcoin, right? Because it's almost 3 right now. But if you want to call it even like 2.5, well, 2x the Bitcoin position would be roughly 28 billion. And then maybe we can take out a couple of billion on debt, right? So maybe you're looking at like 24, 25 billion. So maybe that's why, in my opinion, the stock is just kind of hanging out right now, because we could potentially be right around fair value, right? They might be valuing this whole company right now at roughly about 2 times their Bitcoin holdings. Now, if we go up to 2.5, you'd be looking at a market cap of like 30 plus billion. And if we happen to go 3 times, then obviously you're looking at like around 40. So that's why, again, if you know more than I do, if you're involved in the crypto space, if you're very bullish long term on Bitcoin, then obviously this looks like an opportunity for you. We can see, though, the debt recently jumped up from about 2.25 billion up to 3.6 billion. Company's got about 80 million cash on hand. Short-term liabilities outweighing short-term assets, inverse on the long term. And that's why, again, on paper, technically, the company shouldn't be valued this high, but it's all about the Bitcoin holding. And we can see assets jumped up here, going from the 2s and the 3s up to almost 5, up to 6.25 billion as of last quarter. Liabilities chunked up as well, though, getting up to around 4 billion. Total assets minus total liabilities yields total equity. We can see total equity has gone from minus hundreds of millions to plus hundreds of millions now to a couple of billion. And the total equity is sitting here at 2.4 billion. We have 3.6 billion in debt as of last quarter, and the book value per share went from negative double digits all the way up now to positive $136 a share, trading almost 10x times book value. So if you look at the actual fundamental metrics like we usually do, you will come to the conclusion that the stock shouldn't be this high. But then when you take into account, hey, listen, they're holding 14 billion worth of Bitcoin, that's when the story changes. So that's why, again, in this situation, you are buying a Bitcoin holder. You are not buying MicroStrategy, the company, because the company itself isn't really doing much. And even if we look at it like this, 2.4 billion, total debt, 3.6. So now we're at negative 1.2 billion technically. And if we look annually, they brought in $500 million, so we're at negative 700 million. Cash on hand, even if we call it 100 million, right? We're at a negative fair valuation, in my opinion, for the business. But now, if our quote-unquote fair value is minus 600 million, and now I add 14 billion in value, now we're at like 13.5 billion. And if we look, we have a market cap 23.4. You understand what I'm saying? So now we're trading like 1.7, 1.8 times basically the Bitcoin valuation. That's the point I'm trying to drive home here. But again, the actual company itself doesn't seem to be doing much. Still operating at a big loss, missing on EPS 5 of the last 8 quarters. And revenue, again, basically hit and miss as well, missing on 5 of the last 8 quarters as well. If we go back annually, we can see beats most of the time. Before Bitcoin, though, right? Bitcoin started 2020. Before Bitcoin, they were 2 and 2, as you see, going from 16 to 19. And then coming out of that Bitcoin investment, they actually only missed on the annual side 1 time. But at the end of the day, again, in my opinion, none of this really matters. Because you can see even the segments, like they go up and then they come back down. So we're just kind of in this stagnant roller coaster in the overall business. I mean, we're trading 6,000 times, cash flow 50 times, sales, price to book about 10x. That's almost the highest it's been, minus where it just came from, right? Enterprise value is actually roughly 4 billion higher than the current valuation. But everything else, our return percentages drop back negative. Look at the gross margin percentage drop down to sub 74%. That's the lowest it's been the last several quarters. But this is not why people are buying the stock. Operating margin drop down. Look at that, negative double digits. That's the worst it's been going back to the last several quarters. Same thing on the EBITDA. And the net margin, again, dropped back, went from big positive to big negative. So at the end of the day, again, what you really have to ask yourself is Bitcoin going higher? And if it is, then I guess you can take a shot with this one. Again, I'm not really too big on cryptocurrency, so a lot of you would know more than I do. But if if Bitcoin is going to get to the value that everyone's projecting, I think someone was saying we could potentially see like 200,000 by the end of the year, and by 2033, I think someone was looking for 1 million plus for each Bitcoin. So that's why, if that growth continues and we stay on that path, then yes, MicroStrategy will most likely inevitably continue to go up in value. So that's really the question you have to ask yourself here. But the stock overall, we can see RSI 40 here on the daily. We're at the bottom Bollinger Bands, but again, we just got those notes issued the last couple of weeks, so we might continue in this kind of slight downtrend. I don't know if they'll bring it down to this 200-day moving average of 912.81. We have to see, unless Bitcoin really starts chunking down. But MACD has been slowly pulling back. Again, this stock basically just moves with Bitcoin. Or, of course, as we said, if they issue new notes or something like that, then that could move the stock. But we can see the RSI at multiple times was well above that 70 benchmark, hitting about the 90 and even plus 90 all the way back here in early 21. So the stock doesn't always play by the rules, and again is basically moving with Bitcoin. And we can see that after the big spike up here to start out the year, we had the big drop down, the trumpeting of the Bollinger Bands that we speak about. And now, because the stock has been kind of stagnant and just kind of sideways, now the Bollinger Band has completely made a U-turn and started climbing back up and is now starting to tighten up, sitting here at about 910 and a half. So that we do have a big support level, it looks like, at about that 910 to 912 level. But in my opinion, I really don't think it's going to drop down there unless Bitcoin really sells off. And the 50-day here at 837 and a half. And we can see the MACD recently crossed to the downside. RSI middle of the road here, 53 and a half. But as of right now, yeah, they spent, again, I'm seeing kind of mixed numbers here, but they spent at least 7 to 8 billion on Bitcoin. They're holding over 226,000 Bitcoin. And right now, today, at this value, 62K, it's worth roughly $14 billion. So that's why, you know, if you really do believe that Bitcoin is going to keep climbing, then MicroStrategy is the stock for you. But you now have to keep an eye on Bitcoin and not necessarily an eye on MicroStrategy, but of course you're going to want to pay attention to any price upgrades, you know, any analyst research that comes out, and of course if they take on more debt, issue more notes, so on and so forth. But that's pretty much it, so I'll end it there. Once again, this is Stocks by the Numbers. I want to thank you guys for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually very quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, they're volatile, they are very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thanks for your time. Have a good day.